So now that I've taken a little time and introduced myself to you, I want to introduce you to a concept that I wrote about in Miracle Parenting called the process of blessing. The process of blessing is what I would term as those things that God does in our life that we don't earn, that we're simply responding to His gift of salvation and what takes place in our life on a continual basis. It's not just at the moment of salvation, it is throughout our entire lives. It is the foundation of our life with Him, is in this process of blessing. It's not an event of blessing. You know, events of blessing are wonderful. We have weddings, we have bar mitzvahs, we have baby dedications. Those are events of blessing. But as a parent, you need to be blessing your child every day. And that's exactly what God does in our life. He walks in this blessing of us at all times. So you're experiencing these four things simultaneously at all times from the moment of salvation onwards until the end of time. You're going to be experiencing the blessing of God. In fact, I should say for all of eternity, you're going to be experiencing the blessing of God. And so that process of blessing has four components to it. The first one is that you are known by God. Now we're going to cycle back here, and I'm actually going to teach on each one of these things. But you are known by God. God knows your name. He knew you not only in your mother's womb. That's the most famous quote. You know, that we were fearfully and wonderfully made as we were formed in our mother's wombs. God knows us. And yet we also have scripture that indicates that He knew us before the creation of the universe. He knew exactly who we are. See, we serve a God who's not limited by time or space. He exists outside of time and space. It's as if you have ever seen the Rose Parade in California, or you've ever seen Macy's Parade, and they've got the floating, blown up characters, or the Rose Parade, where I actually went to that one live one year, sat in the stands, froze to death. It was a very cool California morning, and we're all freezing to death, and then by lunchtime we're all burning up. But we're watching these Rose Parade floats go down the road, and then the bands come and they go down the road. And there's a progression, there's a start, and you have these things go by and you're viewing them, and then there's an end. Well, God is above that. He sees the beginning from the end, and He sees it all simultaneously. So He knows your life completely. In fact, what He's done is He's worked your stupid into the manifestation of His grace in your life already. He knows when you're going to screw up. He knows how you're going to screw up. He knows why you're going to screw up. And yet He's worked that all into, for all things work together for good for those who love the Lord and are called according to His purposes. Not every ingredient is good. Not that you would enjoy eating that ingredient by itself. You can make a wonderful loaf of bread and extract one ingredient and put it in your mouth and choke to death off that one ingredient. But woven into the loaf of bread, it's wonderful. And so God is viewing us. He's viewing all of time and space all at once. He's already seen the beginning and the end. He knows the whole story. He knew it even before He created our worlds and our universe. He knew it. And He knows you, but He knows you personally. You're not one in a billion. You know, this is a wonderful message to preach when I'm in China or India, and I'm able to look at a congregation and look at a country with over 1 billion people and say, God knows you personally. He knows your name. He knows your fears. He knows your tears. It's as if you could walk into a warehouse with 1 billion grains of rice and one was painted blue. And you could simply stick your hand in there at any moment in time and pull out that one blue grain of rice. You knew exactly where it was at all times. But not only does God know that grain of rice, He knows all the grains of rice. He knows us personally. He knows us intimately. And this is really one of the things that stands out about Christianity and sets it apart from other religions, is that other religions require the followers to know God. Here's what you need to know about God. Here's how God, you need to function in God's presence. Here's what you need to give God to appease Him. Here's what you need to give God to get God to do what you want Him to do. And that's what most religions are about, getting God to do what you want Him to do. Okay? And yet, our faith in God is with a God that knows us personally. He's a perfect Father. Now, let me say this very quickly. If you had a lousy earthly father, God is nothing like that. If you had a great earthly father like I had, God is so much better than that. Okay? And we'll also get into that later as well. But God knows us. David basically said it blew his mind how well God knew him. That God knew him from the front and from behind, knew his thoughts from afar off. And so he was blown away by the knowledge that God had for him. Paul says that we've come to a knowledge of God. Oh, better yet, God knows us as a son of God. So it's so important to you as an individual to understand the behavior of a perfect Father begins with God knowing you. The Father knows you. He knows you personally. He knows you intimately. He has your best interest at heart. He's always going to extend His right hand into your life for your benefit. Okay? God never corrects with His hand. That's one of the things we teach in a parenting course. A parent should never correct with their hand. I don't want my children to fear my hand. If I lift my hand to them, they should never question, what is Dad going to do with that thing? You know, this hand is always used to lovingly draw in, to draw us close, to minister to us, to give us direction. It is never used for correction or discipline. The hand is never used for correction or discipline. Whether it's God or whether it's us, God extends His hand into our life because He knows us for our benefit. That's aspect one of the blessing. Aspect two is that He has extended to us His unconditional acceptance of us. That means God accepts you based on what He did, based on whose you are, not based on what you did, not based on what you earned. He has unconditionally accepted you because His Son paid the price for you to receive the adoption that has been made available to you. God now sees you through Jesus-colored sunglasses, and you are unconditionally accepted of God, irregardless of your behavior, actions, or motives. Did you hear me? Now that's hard for some of you to receive. That God's acceptance is not affected by our behavior. God's acceptance is not affected by the fact that you fell into a sewage pit. You're still His son. He's going to reach down in there and pull you out because you're His son. So it's not about your behavior. Now, I will say this. God's approval is a different thing. You can be accepted by God and fully, completely accepted by God as a son. But if you're going to receive the approval of God, that's something different. And we'll talk about that later. So the blessing is you're known by God. You're unconditionally accepted by God. Now let's add one more element to it. You're unconditionally loved by God. To receive the unconditional love of God meant that God had to do something more to communicate His love than just say, I love you. Because love is an action. Love requires sacrifice. Honey, if that little boy tells you that he loves you and he cares about you and he thinks you're beautiful and he thinks you have the cutest eyes and he loves the way your lips move and he loves the way your nose is and he loves the way your delicate fingers are and he just thinks you're the most awesome thing on the planet, the first thing you need to ask yourself, yeah, but what is he willing to give up for me?
I know he used to do nice stuff for you, but what has he done for you lately?
What is he willing to sacrifice for me? Because there's no real love without a sacrifice. There's no real love without giving up something. When I committed to my wife for the rest of my life, I gave up other women. I had to change my paradigm and give up things. I gave up the ability to do whatever I wanted to do, whenever I wanted to do it, however I wanted to do it. Okay? And there's a lot of self-directed Christians out there that say they love God, but they're still doing their own thing and asking God to bless it. But God's not that way. He unconditionally loves you, and He cares about you intimately. And then the last part of the blessing is very simple. God will meet your needs according to His riches and glory. He's not going to meet every want and desire. No, that comes later. The rewards come later. But irregardless of your behavior, of your actions, of your works, God will meet your needs. He's going to reach into your life, and some of those needs are physical, but many of those needs are relational, they're spiritual, and God meets those fundamental needs of the human heart through ministering to us both horizontally and vertically. So we have this horizontal relationship with other people who represent Him and a vertical relationship with Himself. So that, in a nutshell, is the blessing. That is the process of blessing. From moment one, God takes 2,000 or 3,000 steps towards you before you ever recognize His existence. He calls you into the family. You reach out. He gives you the power to reach out. He gives you the ability to reach out. He gives you the faith to reach out and cry, Abba, Father, please bring me into the family. And God brings you in adoption as a son of the living God. Even if you're a girl, you're a son. We'll cover that later. And so you're brought in as a son, and you are held in His arms. You're held on His lap. And this is a fantastic tool, because here's where it makes a difference. When a parent exercises the process of blessing in their children's lives, they can reduce unproductive, negative behavior by 80 to 90% in most children. All you have to do is practice the blessing, and you're going to eliminate a majority of negative behavior in your children's lives. Guess what? God practices the blessing with us, and that alone brings a release from sin and a release from negative behavior and a release from the need that we exhibit when we need to be healed in our hearts. A doctor can mend a broken arm, but only Jesus can heal a broken soul.
Philippians 4, verses 4 through 9. Rejoice in the Lord always. Again, I say rejoice. Let everyone see your gentleness. The Lord is near. Do not be anxious about anything. Instead, in every situation, through prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, tell your requests to God. And the peace of God that surpasses all understanding will guard your hearts and minds in Jesus Christ.